So I grew up in Queensland in Australia, which is a long way from the snow, and when I was 3 years old I was very lucky that my parents decided to take up skiing, so we went skiing in New Zealand. And even at that age I was so captured by skiing in the snow industry. And I begged my parents to stay and get a job in the hotel so we could stay longer. After that we did a few trips to the snow, like family holidays, and I knew that I wanted to be involved with skiing somehow. And I remember maybe around the age of 10 there was an interview on TV with a ski instructor, and I thought that would be the coolest thing to do. And I think aside from the living in the present that skiing provides, there's also a really instant feeling of feedback from the external. So when you're skiing and things are not going very well, it's very difficult and there's a lot of effort and it's tiring. But when everything is working and everything lines up properly, it feels very easy to do, and it feels like the world is working in harmony with you and not against you. And again, another very rare thing in this world to feel that happen. I think I like doing long turns the most, but that's because of the speed, and there's not many other times where you can be traveling at that speed without a car or a bike. To stand on your feet and go that fast is amazing. But I don't think that that's my strongest skiing. I think short turns are really exciting because there's such fast energy and rebound and excitement. I also think they're possibly the most difficult to do, but I seem to practice them a lot, and people always want me to do that with them when I'm skiing. I think we put a lot of videos up on slalom skis because it shows a lot of energy, and that's what viewers want to see when they're watching skiing. But I think that my favourite ski is whatever the most specific ski for that type of turn is. So I much prefer being on a GS ski for doing long turns because I can go a lot faster, and that's the enjoyment. And obviously in powder I want to be on a fatter ski because it allows me to float and turn more easily. And then for any short turns or bumps or anything where I want a lot of excitement, then a slalom ski is going to provide that. So it's hard to say, and there's no one ski that does everything, unfortunately. Everyone's chasing that, looking for that ski, but it's difficult. So people always ask how important it is to have tuned skis or boot alignment and about the equipment and what the most important thing is. And I think that, like any system, you can have the best of one thing and something weak on another side, and everything performs as well as the weakest part. So I don't think one part of the equipment is more important than any other part. My skis are always tuned. I have usually 2 or 3 pairs of skis that I use in rotation. The ones that are not being used are being maintained and sharpened, and then once the one that's being used is I'm losing the grip, then I'm switching. So that might happen in Australia every 2 days. The boots allow me to move properly or not move properly. So if I have sharp skis but the boots aren't aligned properly, then I'm in trouble. So that's very important as well. The future for me, that's a hard question to answer because I'm always trying to improve my technique, and the future is whatever is happening at that time in skiing that will facilitate that improvement. So right now, filming with projected is one of the biggest improvements or motivators to improve, and doing the competitions in Japan is a huge motivator, and interski, which is less frequent. Those are the things that really push you and inspire you to be a better skier. I think when you're doing your training as an instructor or as a skier, you need to be able to take information from everywhere, not just your trainer or not just from videos. And I think something that's really helped me as I've gotten older is being better able to translate information that's coming or being given to me rather than judging it immediately, and being able to translate it into words or concepts that I currently know about or talk about or agree with, and seeing how that can translate to fit in with that. And it really allows me to be more open to things that I may otherwise quickly dismiss in my head. And I think that's something that we all need to do more so that we can learn from each other better. So I really enjoy doing long turns because I think that's the most exhilarating speed when you're skiing. The idea that I have as being an impressive long turn is somebody that can show this speed. So not just speed down the hill, but also energy and acceleration across the hill through the end of the turn. So that creates deflection, and then also doing all of this with very fluid, clean movements with flow, so there's no static parts of the turn. Long turns can be hard to do and make look good because the turns are obviously over a longer period of time, and a lot of people struggle with being static over that time. So doing all of this and continuing to move throughout the turn, I think, is quite an impressive thing at speed with power and energy. So when I'm doing long turns, there are two main parts of the turn that I focus on. The first part, and this is not in order, but one part is the position that I'm in when I'm under the most amount of load with the most extreme edge angle. And then the other main focus is how I get from that position in a turn through the transition to the same position in the next turn. They're two very different objectives in those two positions or focuses. When I'm in the middle of the turn or the end of the turn under the most load with the most edge angle, my focus is all about alignment against centripetal force so that I can deal with the most amount of energy and pressure. And the focus that I have through the transition is about moving through a light phase or through using that energy across the hill when I'm not under load, and being very nimble and light and soft so that I can quickly manipulate my body to move effectively into that position on the other side. When I'm doing this, the main feedback that I get, and one of the very good things about a long turn when the skis are carving, is that there's a large amount of pressure. So you have a very strong sensation of balance, force, pressure, whatever you want to call it, that you can recognize and use to determine whether you're in balance or out of balance. When the pressure is strong and you are aligned well, it should feel quite efficient and easy. Not to say that you're not using muscle, but it should feel the alignment is making things work well. And with this amount of force, if you are not aligned well, it really turns the muscles on to work hard. So that's a good indicator for me if things are working cleanly or not. If I'm watching someone struggling with a long turn or something that doesn't look so good or is creating problems, is typically if somebody has moved in too far or angulated too much, or their feet are not between their center of mass and the force that's pushing against their skis. They seem to be the main three issues that I see in long turns and the things that I'm trying to avoid. Yeah, a lot of people ask me if the movement is different on a slalom ski or a GS ski, and I don't think the movement pattern is different at all. I think that the speed you need to be traveling to do the movement correctly is different. Training on a slalom ski is a good thing for long turns because it allows you to have the courage to move in and change your position because the ski will turn around for you. On a long ski, you have to be going very fast to be able to move into that same position. So people often get the timing of it wrong or the speed wrong, but ultimately the way you move is very similar, I think. Okay, so let's talk about some exercises that will help that idea of a long turn. The first one is really to encourage people to continue moving inside the turn so that the edge increases and therefore the pressure increases. So we're going to do just a very inclined hand drag. The important thing when doing this exercise is to stay quite tall and incline in until your inside hand is touching the snow. You're moving closer to the snow, but you're not changing the height of your body. It's staying the same length, I should say, but it's inclining in and getting closer to the snow. When you're doing this exercise, I think it's really important that everything stays stacked. So what I mean is the tib fib, the femur and the spine all stays aligned with each other. I'm not diving in or reverse angulating is a way to think about it to reach for the snow, because then my spine will start to tip in more than my legs. So everything should tip in evenly, so I'm creating one line, okay? As that happens, you'll also see that the ski's bases or edge will tip up and be inclined the same amount as the hips and also the shoulders, okay? When you're doing this exercise, the goal is to get the hand to be scraping the snow on the inside, but when you do it, it shouldn't be done in a way that you're just diving to touch the hand on the snow. If I'm doing it well, it should feel kind of like I'm tipping a bike over. I'm using my sensation of feel and touch of the pressure coming back at me so that I know I can keep moving in, with the end result being hand on the ground. If I move in too quickly, that hand might start to support some of my weight. Or if I move in too slowly, the turn is going to be very long and it might feel like I'm parking and riding, or what we call railing. That go on forever, did it?
No, that was good.
Yeah, well, that's a hard one because it's a feely one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If you fall over, yeah, that tells you you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Now that we're moving inside more and increasing the edge angle, when the force starts to increase, I have a choice between staying inclined like that, which means the force runs either through my outside, my inside, or both feet up to my body and center of mass. I have a choice between keeping it like this and just being inclined, which runs a risk of a few things, or choosing which foot I want to balance against. And that's where I'm choosing the outside foot. So at this time then I want to think about trying to start to level the hip while I'm getting closer to the snow. And I do that by thinking about lifting up my inside half. So that means shortening my inside leg and lifting up my inside hip. So the exercise we're going to do is just some simple J turns, and I'm going to try to physically do this with my hands. So I'm going to put one hand on the inside hip or butt, glute, and the other hand just below my knee on the inside leg. And as I go through the turn, I'm going to start by inclining and then gradually feel my knee come towards my chest, using my hand to pull it up, and also my other hand lifting my glute or inside hip up. When I do this, I know that I'm doing it wrong if my feet get further apart this way. It's okay if they get further apart this way, where one gets shorter and one stays long. But if I'm just simply doing this to make it shorter, that'll then put me on my inside ski, and it won't really be maintaining balance through the outside ski, which is one of my objectives. So another really good way to feel this hip leveling idea is a simple one. You can just take your skis off and try taking little steps backwards up the hill. The idea when you do this is that you keep your legs straight, so you're not bending your legs to do this, and you're trying to use the muscles in your lower back all through your hips and core to try to lift one side of the hips higher so that the foot comes off the ground on that side to take a step. That's the same sort of feeling and the same movements, and a good internal cue to get the feeling of leveling the hip as you're trying to do in this exercise. So it's something you can try and do before you even put the skis on in the morning, and then take that movement or that feeling into the exercise. now that I'm moving into a position that I want to be in to really deal with this extreme pressure or force and edge angle, where my foot is in relation to my center of mass will change through the arc. And I need to make sure that my feet stay between my center of mass and where the force is coming from. So if you look at an arc and you think about a ski traveling along that arc, pressure pushes against the ski perpendicular to the direction the ski is pointing. Okay, so if the ski is like this, pressure pushes on it like this. So at the top of the turn, my foot might seem like it's up the hill or behind me, and then as I go through the turn, my foot might seem like it's level with me, and through the bottom it might seem down the hill or in front of me. That arc or movement of the foot forward is necessary so that I can stay centered and balanced against the force as it pushes against my skis from different angles as I progress through the turn. If the movement of the foot doesn't happen forward, then I'm not balanced and I'll be too far forward, which then forces me to use a lot of muscle to stay upright or balanced. So the exercise I have is like an extreme boot arc. So on the slope, I'm going to kneel down across the slope, and I'm going to extend my downhill or outside leg behind me and then try to pull it forward as much as I can. And as I pull it forward, you'll start to see an arc forming in the snow. And that's the movement I want to feel as I'm inclining and lifting the inside hip. So when I'm doing this exercise and I'm sitting on I'm kneeling down, pulling my foot forward through this arc, I'm trying to use the muscles in my hips and my hip flexors to pull the femur forward, and I'm trying to use my quad to pull the lower part of my leg forward as well. So that would be opening the knee joint. Okay, it's those two parts that are pulling the foot forward. It's not a movement forwards of my outside hip. It's not a whole body rotation to do that. When you're doing this in a turn now, if I'm doing it correctly, it should feel like what's pushing back at me from the snow is coming through the back part of the arch or just in front of the heel. That's where I should be receiving all of the energy from the snow and trying to keep that point between that energy and my center of mass. If that's done well, it should feel reasonably easy to resist the pressure. When you do this exercise, it's very similar to kicking a soccer ball, or when you're swinging your legs forward and backwards when you're warming up before you go skiing. So now I want to focus on the transition, and an exercise I use for this is a skating exercise. So what I want out of the transition is to use as much of the energy from the turn that I've just created to change direction or push me across the hill, but then I also want to be soft enough to cross the skis very directly. So the skating gives you a good feeling of the leg extending to push off like a skate, but the leg that you've pushed off then has to collapse as it's lifted off the snow. And that's the same feeling that I have through the transition. The leg that's been receiving all of the energy has to stay firm and strong to push me across the hill. I need to move with that energy, but then also collapse it as I go into the new turn. When I'm doing this in a skate, I can also start to use my upper body or a swinging sensation from my arms, kind of like a hockey player would do when they're skating in hockey, and that will assist the movement or direction travel across the hill with the pressure from the previous turn. So if I put all of this together, that's really what I'm focused on through the long turn. So you'll see that there's quite a lot of inclination through the top of the turn. I'm setting the hip up to be more level so that I can direct the pressure through the outside ski or balance through the outside ski against the pressure. As it starts to affect change in my direction of travel, I'm trying to stay strong against that to use that energy, but then also soften at the right time to cross the skis and start into the new turn. So I hope these exercises help you to achieve this type of long turn, and I hope to see you out there practicing.